First most important thing about learning is to know there are different types of learning. This is why some people did well in school and others didn't, because they were mostly all taught exactly the same. So whatever it is you want to learn, you must first learn your concept of learning. So let's begin with the different types of learning. First of all, we have visual. This can be learning through symbols, making boxes, charts, using lots of different colours when you're learning, highlighting things, diagrams, graphs and pictures. These are the sort of people that learn best through reading. The next learning type is learning verbally. These are people who often recite out loud, that like writing their own notes, like to highlight key points. These people usually have a passion for words and writing. They like tongue twisters and rhymes and will often learn things by relating them to other words and meanings, such as learning a language, you think of similar meanings or words. The next type of person, how they learn, is people who learn more well with oral. So they often use sounds and music. They learn by hearing, listening, spoken instruction. These people learn well with audiobooks, CDs, or learning through podcast while doing other things. The next learning type is physical learning. These people use their body and sense of touch to learn. So they like to move things, touch things, build things. These are very hands-on people. They also are known not to be able to sit for periods of time. And obviously these people go into jobs mostly with construction or art or building or other physical jobs. The next learning type is logical. These are people who ask questions. They want to understand the whole picture. They will query many things. They will always be putting their hand up in class. These people are natural thinkers. They learn by classifying, categorising, or thinking abstractly about patterns, relationships, and so on and so forth. There has to be meaning to what they are learning. The next learning type is social. These people work well in groups. They like to brainstorm. They are like types of group sports and they like social activities, so they work better in a group than individual or a silent class. The final of these learning type categories are solitary learners. These are the complete opposite to the previous social learning types. Solitary learners are independent and introspective. They spend lots of time on their own. These are normally people that like to keep journals and engaging in self-analysis to understand themselves. These would be people who sit and study well on their own. I like to think of myself as a planner when I learn. I like to follow a procedure of learning, and I have done videos which I will link some of below about different ways I learn. And in this video background you can see, obviously I'm speaking about how to learn languages. You can see my charts and graph behind me, which I have shared in another video. A more scientific purpose of the way that we learn is obviously your brain. There are two main halves of the human brain. the left hemisphere and the right hemisphere, and they work in different ways. So whichever side of your brain you exercise more helps to signify the way you learn. The two sides of the brain can work together, each hemisphere contributing its own special abilities to a task in hand, such as learning, or they can work separately, or they can even work in opposition to each other. As the left hemisphere controls the right hand, the right hemisphere controls the left hand, and there may be times when the right hand does not know what the left hand is doing. In most people, one hemisphere tends to dominate the other. This is why you often find artists, actors, and creative people can mostly be left-handed. Tell me if that's correct if you're a left-hander. And you may not have noticed this before, but now when you're watching your dramas and things on TV and films, look what hand they're using. It's an unlikely but definite, very high amount of left-handed people that are actors, in contrast to those that are right-handed. If you've never noticed this, I guarantee if you start looking at actors now, you will see more are left-handed than right. So already this is partly explaining how you'll learn or what you are geared to becoming. If you are predominantly a right-brain thinker, you tend to be intuitive and think in pictures. You're probably artistic or musical. You see things as a whole, and your leaps of insight enable you to create new combinations of ideas. If you are predominantly a left-brain thinker, you tend to be logical and verbalise your ideas. You are probably skilled with numbers or words. You analyse things and arrive at new ideas by working through the information you have and reaching a rational conclusion. Modes of thinking. Left brain. You enjoy planning new things in detail. You are logical and rarely jump to conclusions. You rarely daydream or remember nighttime dreams. You try to find the reasons behind other people's behaviour. You prefer mathematical and scientific subjects to artistic subjects. You are punctual and have a good sense of time. You are good at describing your feelings in words. You rely on the evidence when making a decision. Your files and reference materials are in perfect order. You keep your hands still when talking. You rarely have hunches and prefer not to follow intuition. You rarely think in visual terms. You are good at explaining things. You solve problems by keeping at them and trying to different approaches until you find a solution. You're very good at puzzles and word games. Your feelings are normally kept well under control. You prefer reading non-fiction to romantic novels. You analyse problems. You are not particularly musical. Now, of course, you may not have 100% of those because you could be left and right-brained rather than just left. But let me know in the comments below how many of those apply to you. Now let's look at right brain. I enjoy doing new things on the spur of the moment. I can reach conclusions without following all the details of an argument. My dreams are very vivid and I often daydream. I can rarely see the motivation behind other people's behaviour. I prefer artistic subjects to mathematical and scientific subjects. I'm rarely punctual and have poor sense of time. I find it difficult to put my feelings into words. I rely on my feelings when making a decision. I rarely bother to file things. I gesture a lot when I'm talking. I rely on my instincts and follow my hunches. My impressions and thoughts often appear as pictures. I can understand what someone means without being able to explain it. I solve problems by putting them to the back of my mind and waiting for a solution to come up. I do not enjoy puzzles and word games. I let my feelings show. I prefer reading romantic novels to non-fiction. I deal with a problem as a whole. I am very fond of music. How many of those were you? If there were more of those, then you're right-brained. If there was more of the previous list, you are left-brained. If you find you are fairly equal on both, then again, your left brain is working in conjunction with your right brain. Now you can begin to sort out, with all the information so far, what is your best way of learning by promoting these things I have just listed. So to sum it up, the modes of thinking. The left brain deals with verbal ideas and uses words to describe things. Analyses, breaks things down into their constituent parts. Uses symbols to represent things. Abstracts relevant pieces of information from the whole. A good sense of time. So here again, charts and planning would work. Relies on facts and reasoning, so pinpoint maybe on little cards. A good sense of number. Poor sense of spatial relationships. And thinks lineary, one idea follows another. So sometimes learning by rote suits left brain. Now let's look at the modes of thinking, again summing up the right brain. Aware of things but does not connect them with words, uses gestures or pictures in description, so make your note with pictures or symbols. Synthesizes, puts parts together to form a whole, so again charts work well here. See things as they are. Makes analogies and sees likenesses. Poor sense of time. Again, you might need, therefore, to make a plan if you're studying for an exam day. Relies on intuition and instinct. Poor sense of number. Good sense of spatial relationships. Intuitive and thinks holistically. Sees patterns linking ideas as a whole, so maybe something like flowcharts to remember key points. So taking everything I've said so far into consideration, also write down things you like to do and your skills. And in that way, you should, of course, be able to work out your best way of learning. Always find a teacher that is open to teach you in many different ways. I have done lots of videos on learning languages and planning and different concepts of how to learn. I'll link a few below, but do look through both my channels to see more. And I cover such thing on my lives that are called Inspirational Thursday Thoughts. So look at those under my lives. And this takes the psychology of learning and who you are and why you are you into consideration. So if you're interested in fun psychology, there's lots of games and tests to find out more about yourself and change yourself. And one of the subjects I covered there was how things affect you by the order in which you were born. If you want to learn a language, then I have lots more about that too on both my channels. If you like this video, don't forget, hit that thumbs up and share with friends. Here is a Greek poem I wrote.